Shalom and welcome to Temple Talk. This is Yitzhak Rubin speaking to you from just east of Jerusalem. Today is the 12th day of the month of Kislev, 5782. It's December 16th, 2021. This coming Shabbat, we read Parashat Vayishlach, and he sent Genesis 32:4 to 36:43. We're going to be talking about that in just a few minutes. A few announcements, or I should just say some thoughts. I just finished a very interesting book, which I'm going to share with you. It just came out apparently, and I ordered it and read it. It's called Under Jerusalem. It's by an author named Andrew Lawler. I must admit, I have never heard of him before. I don't know much about him. He's written a few other books. This book is about the history of archaeology in Jerusalem, which really begins in the 19th century with European, mainly British, French archaeologists. And it's a very fascinating book. It comes right up to the present day, right up to the discoveries in the city of David. In fact, it was written so recently that he refers to certain things that have happened in 2021. So, of course, when reading a book like this, and, you know, archaeology is a loaded, charged science subject because, as he points out quite rightly, yes, archaeologists do dig in order simply to discover and learn knowledge for the sake of gaining knowledge. But archaeology also has very serious and powerful nationalist ramifications, religious ramifications. Of course, so many archaeologists want to prove this or that from the Torah, from the Bible, and in order to get funding also, it has to be appealing. It has to have some sex appeal. And so, for example, a dig that's looking for the lost ark is going to attract funding that a dig looking for pottery shards from 2000 BCE might not. In any case, it's a very well-written book, I must say. And as I started to say, I read the book with a very keen eye toward any politics that he might be injecting into it. As you know, anything that's written about Israel is most likely going to be positive or negative or bring in all sorts of political agendas. I must say he really steered away from that. I didn't agree with everything that he wrote, but on the other hand, he really did steer away from injecting partisan politics, let's say, into this history. And as I said again, it's very fascinating, very readable. So if you're interested in the history of archaeology in Jerusalem, it's mostly centered around the Temple Mount and under the Temple Mount. It's mostly centered in digs under. So much has been discovered under the Temple Mount, under the old city, under the city of David, because there's people living on the surface. And that's one of the fascinating aspects of these digs. In any case, this book is called Under Jerusalem by Andrew Lawler. And very readable. It almost reads like a novel, like an adventure novel, but it is factual. And there's so many colorful archaeologists who have been to Israel over the past 200 years, beginning with the Ottoman era, and then the British Mandate era, and then, of course, now in the state independent nation of Israel. Very fascinating. In fact, and speaking of archaeological digs, it was just revealed today that a Maccabean is another term for Maccabean, artifacts were found here in Israel. Actually, it is a fortress that was destroyed by the Maccabees, a fortress that was built by the Greek occupiers here in Israel, and apparently was destroyed. There's signs that it was destroyed by the Maccabee warriors, and it's 2,100 years old approximately. It was discovered in the Lachish forest in Israel. We've posted an article about it on our Facebook page with a very beautiful video, which was originally posted on the Israel National News website. And again, we're just 2 weeks away from Hanukkah, so now's the time, huh? And as I said before, there's always politics and there's always an angle with archaeology. And so you may have noticed each year that around Hanukkah time, they announce new finds that are relevant to Hanukkah, and around Passover time, maybe they'll find something that's relevant to Passover, and so on and so forth. It's not that they're certainly not making it up, and they're certainly not hiding anything, but if they discovered something in the past couple of months, this is a very recent discovery, then they'll wait till it's a little bit closer to Hanukkah, because that just makes it a little more exciting, a little more publicity, and of course, it's history. And again, the power of archaeology in Israel today is its ability to reveal the ancient roots of the Jewish people here in the land of Israel, indisputable roots that any other population here that has been here or come here or conquered here or colonized here or settled here since then can make a claim to being here for a long time or not, but certainly the nation of Israel, the Jewish people, trump them all, because we have been here for thousands of years and we have the proof under the ground. And that's one of the powerful tools of archaeology, especially around the Old City, especially around the Temple Mount. In fact, I read another article, apparently a movie's coming out, maybe Netflix, maybe, I'm not sure. I'm really not sure. But a movie about an earlier, in fact, it's also mentioned in Lawler's book, an earlier exploration in which they tried to find the Ark of the Covenant. The person who was looking for it, I believe it was a French expedition, and he claimed to have all sorts of biblical codes and signs that he knew exactly where it was. And I think he claimed to have actually found it, but there has been absolutely no proof that he did. But that's the whole magnetism of archaeology here in Israel, here in Jerusalem, because those ancient temple treasuries, those temple vessels, people still want to find them. They still want to dig them up, even though the Temple Institute has reproduced them. And what we've reproduced, of course, is kosher and fit. It goes by all the Torah standards and measurements and materials, and complies with the 2,000 years of oral tradition, which, of course, was recorded in the Talmud and other Jewish literature throughout the past 2,000 years. But in any case, there is certainly an allure and attraction to finding the originals, or at least the Second Temple versions of some of these artifacts, some of these vessels, sacred vessels. So it's all very exciting. Another interesting thing that I discovered and shared again on our Facebook page earlier this week, was this idea based on a study that the name Palestine may not come from the Roman interpretation of the ancient Hebrew Pelishtim, which were the Philistines. And as tradition goes, the Romans, after destroying the temple and Jerusalem and occupying Israel and putting down the Bar Kokhba rebellion in 136 CE, renamed the land Palestina in order to really stick it to the Jews, that they renamed the land the name of our old adversaries, the Pelishtim. Of course, the Pelishtim at that time no longer existed. But another interpretation And apparently it's not so new. It's from a 2001 article by David Jacobson, but I just saw a reference to it on the Elder of Zion blog, actually on his Twitter feed, I should say. And he proposes that the name actually comes from the Greek word, I just want to say that the word Palestine, actually refers to a Greek word, Palestis. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing it correctly, ancient Greek, which means wrestler. So the name Palestine, if this is correct, doesn't refer to the land of the Plishtim, the land of the Philistines. It refers to the land of the wrestler. So why would the Romans, using a Greek word, rename the land of Israel Palestine after the Greek word for wrestler? Well, that answer to that, as you may have anticipated, is in this week's Torah reading, Parshat Vayishlach, which again begins Genesis 32:4, concludes Genesis 36:43. Let's read the first few verses. I'll read it in Hebrew and then in English. Vayishlach Yaakov malachim lefanav el Esau achiv arza seir sde Edom. Vayetzav otam lemor ko tomrun ladoni leEsav ko amar avartecha ko amar avdecha Yaakov im Lavan garti va'echar adata. ויהדידי שור, וחמור, צאן, ועבד, ושפחה, ואשלחה להגיד לאדוני, למסוחן בעיניך. Okay, in English. Then Yaakov sent angels ahead of him to Esau, his brother, to the land of Seir, the field of Edom. He charged them, saying, Thus shall you say to my lord, to Esau, so said your servant Yaakov, I have sojourned with Lavan, and have lingered until now. I have acquired oxen and donkeys, flocks, servants, and maidservants, and I am sending to tell my lord to find favor in your eyes. So, of course, as we recall the end of last week's Parsha, Vayetze Yaakov, after spending 20 years in Haran, in Padan Aram, Mesopotamia really, with Lavan, his father-in-law, working for him, the first 7 years working in order to marry Rachel. And he didn't get Rachel, he got Leah, so he worked another 7 years for Rachel. And then he worked another 6 years raising flocks and eventually developing his own flocks, much to the chagrin of Lavan, even though it was an agreement that he would be able to develop his own flocks. We read about that in detail in last week's Parsha. And then, of course, this traumatic split between the two. And now he's returned back, and he sends what they call, and translate here as angels, malachim. The word malachim in Hebrew means either angel or messenger. It can be either one. So oftentimes, as for example, the three men who came to visit Abraham when he was sitting outside of his tent, are actually described originally as three men. Later on, they're described as malachim. But the point is, malach can be an angel, it can be a human being who's a messenger. Obviously, a malach, an angel, is a messenger of Hashem. It's got the same meaning, but they can either be heavenly or earthly. And very fascinating that the Torah doesn't often make the distinction, leaving it up to us, or maybe suggesting that it's a little bit of this and a little bit of that. There's no... Now, just before this, as we recall in the end of last week's Parsha, it says, and the verse right before this, it says, after Lavan parted from Yaakov, it says that Yaakov went on his way, and angels of Hashem, of God, encountered him. Yaakov said when he saw them, this is a godly camp. So he called the name of that place Machanayim, which means camps. So there clearly, if these were messengers of God, those were angels. So on his way into the land, he saw angels. Now he's sending messengers. My guess would be that they are earthly messengers because he has an earthly mission right now. He wants to check out his brother from afar to see if he's still upset, so if he still wants to murder him, and he also wants to impress him. So he mentions how much his wealth, all these livestock and servants are, of course, signifying the wealth that he's amassed over the years. And he's speaking very politely, my lord, your servant Yaakov, being a little bit obsequious. He's nervous. He's very nervous, and he wants to check things out. Of course, to make a long story short, the messengers come back, and they say, yes, he's there. He's got 400 men with him. And so Yaakov goes through an elaborate preparation, dividing up his own family into the children of Leah and her children, and the two different maidservants, Tzilpa and Bilhah and their children, and Rachel and her one child now. Benjamin's not been born yet, which is Yosef. And they finally meet. And as you know, it's really what do we say? I can't think of the expression, but sort of a letdown. I mean, if you're expecting some action here, it just doesn't happen. They meet, they hug, they embrace. Esau is very gracious, and he asks when they meet. Esau asks, and I'm reading in chapter 33, verse 8, what did you intend by that whole camp that I met? Why did you present me with this whole encampment and all these things? And Yaakov answers, to gain favor in my Lord's eyes. And Esau says, I have plenty, my brother. Let what you have remain yours. But Yaakov said, no, I beg of you. If I now have found favor in your eyes, then accept my tribute from me, inasmuch as I have seen your face, which is like seeing the face of a divine being, and you were appeased by me. Please accept my gift, which was brought to you, inasmuch as God has been gracious to me, and inasmuch as I have everything. He urged him, and he accepted. And he said, travel on and let us go. I will proceed alongside you. That's what Esau said. He said, let's travel together. But then Yaakov replies, my Lord knows that the children are tender, and the nursing flocks and cattle are upon me. If they will be driven hard for a single day, then all the flocks will die. Let my Lord go ahead of his servant. I will make my way at my slow pace according to the gate of the drove before me and the gate of the children, until I come to my Lord at Seir. So all is good. There's no hard feelings. Esau seems to have forgotten or let bygones be bygones. It really is very beautiful, and it could be unseen as a beautiful prophecy of things to come someday here in Israel and in the world. Brothers, letting bygones be bygones, embracing. However, I must say that our sages, our rabbis of old, were a little bit wary of this very happy, blue-skied interpretation, even though it's really the literal words of the Torah. But they point out that in the actual Sifrei Torah, in the actual Torah scrolls that have been written, codified, and written in the exact same way for thousands of years, over the word Vayishakehu in 33 verse 4, there are 4 dots. That's part of the scribal ritual, to put those 4 marks over. I think there's more than 4. There's one over each letter, and there's actually 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 letters. So 6 dots over each of the letters. And the tradition is those dots suggest that there's something funny going on. There's another meaning, that it's covering up the true meaning, and that the word Vayishakehu, which means he kissed him, should be Vayishachehu, that he bit him. That he bit his brother. And to follow up on this concept is the Midrash that at that moment, Yaakov's neck turned into a pillar of marble. And so when Esau went to bite him to cause him harm, he broke his teeth against Yaakov's neck. So this is very fascinating, and it sure does put a damper on what looked like a real good, positive meeting. Everybody got over the past, and just to think, what do they say? I have everything. I've got it all, everybody's satisfied with their lot. Why would they do that? Why would the rabbis cast aspersions and doubts on this very happy meeting of the brothers? And I would suggest that Esau, otherwise known as Edom, right, red, became a symbol for the Roman Empire and for the Roman exile. He became a symbol for all that the Romans had done to Israel, conquering, destroying, exiling, and in the process killing hundreds and thousands of Jews. And this Roman exile, which is the fourth of 4 exiles that Israel was destined to suffer under, is the exile that we're only beginning to emerge out of today. Now, the Roman exile obviously transformed from pagan Rome into Christian Rome. So the Christian era is part of this exile of Edom. So Esau, who in the Torah text itself, he's a hunter, he's a rough guy, he's outsmarted twice by Yaakov, and he, has a temper, and he swears he's going to kill his brother, but in the end he doesn't. He's, you can argue, is he a good guy, is he a bad guy, is he just kind of a, who knows, just kind of a schlump, who knows, but according to tradition, because of this, that he is seen as the eponymous father of the Romans, that he also, one of his descendants was Amalek, and we know that Amalek is the nemesis of Israel. So he's got a lot of negative baggage. So that is why I believe in this particular passage, rabbis really stuck it to him. And again, there are those dots over those 6 letters of the word Vayishakehu, signifying whatever they signify. So that is the story of their fateful meeting, which, again, there were no fireworks, there were no recriminations, there were no threats. It was just a heartfelt get-together, a hug and a kiss, and we'll each be on our way. And that was the last time that they would run into each other until later we will read that they both buried their father, Yitzhak. Interestingly enough, Yitzhak is still alive at this point, 20 years after he gave the blessing to Yaakov, 20 years after he said to Esau, I don't know the day of my death, so let's not wait till the last minute. Go out and hunt, prepare me some food, and I'll give you the blessing. That was 20 years ago, and he's still going strong. We only will read of him again when at his death, to find out that he's died. But as of this moment in our story, he is alive. Now, getting back to that point about the name Palestina, the name Palestine, and Palestis, and the idea of the wrestler, that, as you may have guessed, refers to the fascinating passage which takes place just before he meets his brother Esau, when Yaakov, after he has gathered all his family and all his people and all his property and moved them across a river called the Yabok, which is a tributary of the Jordan River, which that river still flows today between Israel and Jordan, the country Jordan. And he brings them across onto the Israel side of the Jabbok River. And then he goes back. We're not told why he goes back. But again, our sages of old say he went back to get some small things that he had left behind. And then there's a lot of discussion what these small things might be and why he would go back for them. One very fascinating concept is that I believe one of the things he left behind was vessel, a cruse of pure olive oil. And according to a legend, that olive oil was the olive oil that the Maccabees eventually discovered when they retook the Holy Temple from the Greek occupiers. And in search for some pure oil for the menorah, they found this one cruse of pure oil marked by the Kohen, by the temple priest, that it was sealed and certified pure. And its actual origin is right here with Yaakov. But I'm not going to get into that anymore right now. I'm going to talk about the actual contests he had. So it says, it's back to chapter 32, verse 25, Yaakov is left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. Again, right here, it's called Vayavek Ish Imo, a man, Ish. It's not referred to as an angel here. He is referred to as a man. But again, as I said earlier, the Torah is not so specific. Sometimes it refers to an angel as a man. Sometimes it refers to an angel as an angel. And there's no exception here. So let's read exactly what happens. It says, Yaakov is left all alone. I'm reading, again, 32, verse 25. Yaakov is left all alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn. Until the break of dawn. Apparently, again, Midrash tells us that at the break of dawn, this angel had to get going. He couldn't stick around. Why? Well, he had other duties to perform. He had to praise Hashem at the break of dawn. He couldn't stick around. He had to close. He had to end this wrestling match. And so he was a bit urgent. And then when he perceived that he cannot overcome him, that is, when the angel perceived that he cannot overcome Yaakov, he struck the socket of his hip. So Yaakov's hip socket was dislocated as he wrestled with him. Then he said, let me go. The angel said, let me go, for dawn has broken. Okay, so they are wrestling, this human being, mortal man, and this angel, it seems, are wrestling, and one cannot overcome the other. But at this point, the angel has seriously injured Yaakov. But he was asking Yaakov to let him go. Yaakov has not let up his grip on this man. And he says, I will not let you go until you bless me. And the angel said to him, what is your name? He replied, Yaakov. And the angel said, no longer will it be said that your name is Yaakov, but Israel. For you have striven with the divine and with man and have overcome. Let's just go over that verse in Hebrew. And in Hebrew it is Vayamer lo Yaakov ye'amer od shimcha. Your name will no longer be called Yaakov, ki im Yisrael, but it will be Israel, ki sarita, im Elohim ve'im anashim vatuchal. Your name will be Israel because you have striven with the divine and with the man and have overcome. The actual word here is Elohim, which means God. I mean, divine is a fine translation. Sometimes you'll see in parentheses, angel of God, because this was an angel he was fighting with. But here it just says you have striven with God and with man and have overcome. That is, you have survived, you've made it. And Yaakov inquired and said, divulge, if you please, your name. And the angel said, why then do you inquire of my name? And he blessed him there, and then disappeared without giving him his name. And so Yaakov called the name of the place Peniel, for I have seen a divine face to face, yet my life was spared. So Yaakov is in awe of the fact that he's alive. Peniel, from the word panim, which means face, and Peniel is the face of God. And then it says the sun rose for him as he passed Penuel. For some reason, the Torah changes the pronunciation and spelling from Peniel to Penuel. And he was limping on his hip. Therefore, the children of Israel are not to eat the displaced sinew on the hip socket to this day, because he struck Yaakov's hip socket on the displaced sinew. And yes, in fact, to this day, the children of Israel, that is today's Jews, do not eat the sciatica nerve, which is the sinew that they're referring to here. And it takes a very skilled butcher to remove the sciatica from the meat so that we can eat the meat without violating this prohibition. It's one of the few commandments, mitzvot, that we have inherited from our patriarchs. Of course, the Brit Milah, the circumcision, is from Avraham and Yitzhak, and here the refraining from the eating of the sinew of this the sciatica nerve of the animal. So what's this all about? What's this wrestling match all about? Why? Where? How? Why was he approached? Why did this angel come up out of nowhere in the middle of the night? We're never told the reason. It's not clear. It seems to be a necessary prelude either to Yaakov's return into the land of Israel or a prelude to his meeting of his brother Esau. And one suggestion is that this angel was actually the guardian angel of Esau, and that he had gone, just as Yaakov was sending messengers, angels, right, to sort of suss out Esau and see where he was up to and what he was thinking. It seems that Esau sent out a messenger, an angel, or the angel took it upon himself to confront Yaakov before his actual meeting with Esau and see what he could do about it. So perhaps this was the reason why, when they finally did meet, Esau and Yaakov were fully reconciled and no longer had any fighting spirit because they'd already fought it out and came to a standstill. That may be, but the Torah itself doesn't state that, but it does state that your name will be Israel because you have struggled, you have wrestled with God and with man. What is that all about? Aren't we supposed to obey God, listen to God, be loyal to God? Well, of course we are, but the Torah is all about the relationship between man and God. It's all about confrontations between man and God. It starts with Adam, who God engages with Adam, and God basically invites Adam to spend the rest of eternity in the Garden of Eden on one condition, that he doesn't eat from the fruit of the tree of knowledge. And Adam opts out and says, I'm not interested in that. And that, of course, is the beginning of human history. And then, of course, we have the covenant between Noach and God and Avraham and God, and we have the confrontation even between Cain after he's killed his brother Abel, and God says, what have you done? And he says, am I my brother's keeper? They're actually, man and God wrestle all the time, and man is always trying to understand what God is asking, what God is demanding, and God is trying to figure out what this man that he created is all about. And this is how a relationship develops and becomes a covenantal relationship, when we learn how to agree and accept what the other needs in order for this relationship to exist and to continue. And that really is the definition of Torah. That's the definition of Judaism, this relationship, man wrestling with God, man wrestling with other men. It's all part of finding our place in God's creation and learning how to be the people that God intended for us to be the individuals and the people that God intended for us to be. And that is perhaps why the Greeks referred to Israel as Palestis, and the Romans renamed the land Israel, Palestine, not as a dig against Israel, but actually as honoring this inner nature, the essence of the nation of Israel, wrestlers with God and with man. One quick announcement, there will be no Temple Talk next week. We'll be back in 2 weeks during Hanukkah. Thank you so much for being with me. Temple Talk.